Hello and welcome to the Sustainability Series. I'm Mark Barton. As COP26 approaches, the need for action on climate change is becoming ever more urgent. Bold measures are required from both governments and business leaders to translate commitments to reduce carbon emissions into meaningful action. In this series, we're going to discuss the innovative technologies and solutions needed to transition to a low-carbon world and examine the policies required to remove obstacles to the development and broad adoption of clean technologies. Here's how ABB is helping industries and communities transition to a low-carbon economy.
We are at an inflection point in history.
It's time for humanity to grow up.
We all know by now that we're at a turning point, but we believe there's still time to make meaningful change through innovative technology. At ABB, we're helping industries and communities make real advances towards a low-carbon, circular economy. Technology is helping us address the world's energy challenges as society transitions to cleaner power and cleaner fuel. Right now, almost half the world's electricity is used to power motors in factories and other buildings. New ultra-high efficiency motors are transforming industries, drastically cutting energy use and helping sectors achieve the EU's goal of improving energy efficiency by nearly a third by 2030. And we're in a new era of sustainable transport, not just on the roads, but on rail and at sea, where new technologies are targeting the shipping industry, which currently accounts for around 2.5% of global CO2 emissions. And through all these changes, we have to keep empowering people with new skills and opportunities, making use of digital technologies to enable new, smarter business models. Many of the solutions already exist, so how do we maximise their use? How can industry work best with lawmakers and regulators to build a cleaner, smarter future for all of us?
Today's panel discussion is Leading with Technology. The International Energy Agency says energy efficiency is one of the key pillars of decarbonisation of the global energy system. Many efficiency measures in industry, buildings, appliances and transport can be put into effect and scaled up very quickly. Efficiency improvements also help reduce the vulnerability of business and consumers to potential disruptions to electricity supplies. Our panelists today bring unique business, policy and investment insight on energy efficiency and why it plays a vital role in tackling the scale of this unprecedented challenge. It's my pleasure to welcome Morten Virod, President of Motion Business Area at ABB, Jennifer Anderson, Co-Head of Sustainable Investment and ESG at Lazard Asset Management, Brian Motherway, Head of Energy Efficiency at the IEA, and Julien Guennetier, Vice President, Energy Division at Alfa Laval. Morten, let's kick it off with you. Why is energy efficiency the unsung hero when it comes to decarbonizing the world?
Energy efficiency is what I really love about it. It's what is available already today. While many of the other topics we can discuss, which is great around carbon capture, getting renewables installations, these are all great and things we have to do, but they will take time. Energy efficiency is already here today. It's possible to do it right now, and we are doing it many places, but we can do so much more. And there is where I'm so happy that we get this panelists together so we can discuss a very important topic for us at ABB, but also I think for the whole world.
And Morten's dropped the L word in already, love. I love the love word when we're talking about this subject. Brian, let's get to you. We mentioned you, what your ambitions are, the IEA, when it comes to energy efficiency. What role, Brian, does energy efficiency play in tackling the scale of this unprecedented challenge that faces us?
It's hard to imagine we're going to meet our goals towards net zero, towards decarbonisation, towards energy systems of the future without leading with energy efficiency. As Morton says, it's here, it's available, it's often cheap, it can make our energy more affordable, it can reduce emissions really quickly. Morton says he loves it, but let's recognise that it's not always that sexy. It can be the more complicated stuff to deliver. It can be, we're talking about motors, we're talking about building fabric. It's not always headline news, but really, without energy efficiency really, in the front seat, our path to net zero is nigh on impossible, certainly much harder, much more expensive.
It's our role, by the way, Brian, to make it sexy. So we've had love, we've had sexy. This is what I like. This is what we're trying to do, make this subject sexy. Julian, are we seeing a major worldwide push to increase energy efficiency from your standpoint?
Well, I don't think so. At least not in proportion with the contribution that energy efficiency need to bring in and chip in the race to net zero. I think the IEA, Brian, is estimating that 40% of the CO2 reduction should come from energy efficiency. And I don't think the bandwidth that energy efficiency has currently is aligned with this contribution. Yet we see many initiatives, and recently we made a survey among 50 large industrial companies in Sweden, and 3 out of 4 respondents confirm that they had investment plan to drive energy efficiency in their target to meet their sustainable goals. So yet only 15% recognize that they are fully utilizing waste heat, but 3 out of 4 committed with investment plans to drive energy efficiency. So there is commitment and activities out there.
Yeah. Jennifer, the investor community, what do they think? What do you think about this theme, this energy efficiency theme?
The energy efficiency theme is, really part of a much broader range of opportunities that we see in the decarbonisation of our energy systems and the move and transition towards net zero economies. I think we've already said that it's kind of less sexy than renewables and some of the other kind of technologies. But we really see it as a very attractive opportunity because of the short payback that often these products and services have, which can quite quickly generate value for investors, but also for society and environment because of those energy savings that are delivered. The other point I'd make just on this is the importance at the moment we're seeing with the volatility in energy markets, and actually thinking about that transition and that kind of smooth transition to a net zero carbon economy. I think energy efficiency is going to play a really important role.
You mentioned technologies, which is the perfect segue, Jennifer. Thank you for helping us move on to our second topic. And the IEA, Brian, says we need to achieve annual rate of energy intensity improvements averaging 4% to 2030. That's about 3 times the average rate achieved over the last 2 decades. That's startling. How can that be achieved, Brian, through the use of technology?
What's interesting here, Mark, is the technologies exist, because when we look at deep decarbonisation, we are talking about technologies like CCUS, hydrogen, other things that really need a lot of focus on innovation and market deployment. Energy efficiency, not so much. There's so much we could do this decade in terms of every home being more efficient, every washing machine being more efficient, every motor in industry being more efficient. So it really is a unique case where the technologies are there ready right now. We don't need to wait for anything. We just need to get on with much larger scale deployment. So you're right. Each year, the world becomes a little bit more energy efficient because we replace some buildings, we replace some motors, we replace some factories, and they're more efficient than the old ones, but not nearly fast enough. Not only do we need to be going more than twice as fast, but we can be going more than twice as fast. The technologies are there. Policy is central here. Consumer behavior is central. And as Jennifer said, investment is really central. And as Jennifer also said, the paybacks are there. The business case for efficiency is really there, and that's what makes it such an important early focus on our journey towards decarbonisation.
And as you bring in Jennifer, let's bring back to Jennifer. I mean, what technologies, when it comes to energy efficiencies, is the investor community most excited about? Jennifer, would you say
so
right now?
maybe there's two parts
Yeah.
in response to this. I think the first part is when we're looking to invest in companies that have tailwinds from sustainability and from energy efficiency, we're really trying to understand how that intersects with the financial productivity and the profitability of companies. And so it may be that this helps to increase the total addressable market. It may help to improve the competitive moat of the company, but it may also help the company to drive additional returns that they can reinvest back in the business. And so when we're thinking about the companies that we own in our portfolios, we are looking at how they're investing in those technologies that have a high return on equity, and that really is kind of very much links to this energy efficiency piece. As investors, and we have a large kind of research platform. Of course, we're looking at those other kind of more sexy kind of long-term technologies like carbon capture and storage and hydrogen. But going back to the panel today, energy efficiency is here now, and so I think investors really are understanding that we need all of the kind of solutions to be able to deliver this net zero transition.
Morten, which technologies are you most excited about right now when it comes to energy efficiency?
I mean, for me, it's when the world goes electric. I mean, that's what we see. We all talk about the EV, electric cars, but it happens really across the globe and across the world. More on everything that moves is today by electric motion. And you don't think about it. It's by the conveyor belt if you're at the airport or taking the train. That is all electric propulsion. And the air here in this room is all by electric fans that we have the right climate control and the right temperature. And here is the key part. If we could use the new technology instead of the old one, so new electric motors instead of the old, I would say outdated, the losses in the high-tech motors that what we have today available, the losses in those motors is 50% lower than in the old outdated technology. So that's what we're talking about. So it's kind of putting up the standards and raising the bar and using the technology that is there.
So the technology is available, Julia, but we need to make it more available or incentivize businesses, industry, consumers to use it. How do we get from A to B? How do we create this demand and actual action towards using these available technologies?
First of all, I would like to repeat what I've been saying. Yeah. The technology exists.
Great.
The technology exists.
Yes.
The technology is there and it's put in use in many, many places. We at Alfa Laval, we are dealing mainly with heat energy, and we recover heat from data center, heat from process industries, and recycling that heat into district heating networks that are consuming this waste heat. And our heat exchangers every year newly installed save 50 gigawatt of energy capacity production thanks to energy efficiency. So this is already in motion and it's already happening. I think there are a couple of things that we can do to foster that. I think particularly in the area of business model innovation in order to foster sector coupling, to put the consumer closer to the producer of heat, for example. And I think digitalization, big data, the use of predictive algorithm is going to be an additional or bring an additional leap into the energy efficiency systems. But the technology is there.
Brian, the technology's there. We can't say that enough, but I'm reading your report. In 2050, almost half the reductions that we need come from technologies that are currently at the demonstration or the prototype phase. So we need huge innovation efforts to take place to bring these new technologies to market. Are we doing so? How are we doing? How do we achieve that?
So I think it's fair to say decarbonization, clean energy, net zero, whatever you want to call it, is becoming a driving global narrative. Business sees that, business is innovating, investors are investing. I think I'm optimistic. I've no doubt that the clever people around the world will come up with the right solutions. Energy efficiency, I think, in terms of the technology solutions, falls into two categories. First of all, there's just good old-fashioned stuff. Washing machines need to be more efficient. Lights need to be more efficient. it's all possible today, and all those products are on the market. The second half then is what Julian's alluding to. I very much agree. Digitalization is going to be really exciting for energy efficiency, as it is for all of clean energy, really making things much more optimal, much greater levels of control, much greater levels of data and interactivity. So for efficiency, I think the real innovations will be there in the technologies, but also in the businesses and the policies and the ways of doing things that capitalize on those technologies.
Yeah, and we'll come to the policies in just a few moments' time. Let's talk sort of sectors. You talked about sector coupling, Julia, which I'm glad you've addressed. But from a sector basis, which sectors, Morten, are we seeing the greatest reduction in energy efficiency? Are we seeing a spending balance across sectors when it comes to energy efficiency? How do you look at it from a sector viewpoint?
No, I think there again we'll see it in transportation. We have a great opportunity, and that's very visible for all of us when we're moving from diesel to electric trains, as one example. But it's also in industries, in everything we do on the process side in industries as well. So it's really across the board, and in buildings, of course, I mentioned all the the heating, the ventilation, what you have in the smart buildings. So it's really across the board where that energy efficiency is a great opportunity, and we can really make a difference.
Yeah, and do you think, Julia, that industry can sort of almost keep a step ahead of regulations and reduce energy consumption as fast as possible, taking the lead by itself without having to wait for policies and regulation to do the heavy lifting?
Why not? I'm glad Jennifer, as an investor or representing the investor community, says it. I mean, energy efficiency projects offer good payback and also usually low risk. I mean, on the new technologies, on new clean energy sources, there is a different part of risk. Here, the technology are well proven, so the risk is also pretty low. It usually comes down to capital allocation. That's where we find the challenges for some of our customers, and across industries we see that challenge. Allocating capital to those energy efficiency projects is usually a challenge.
And I fully agree with you, but I think we cannot neglect the importance of policies and regulations, because we don't have the time to wait that everybody will see and will understand. We have tried that for many years. I'm a very impatient person, so I would also like to see that because this just makes sense. So let's also make policy and more of global governance on the topic, because this is, when you talk about carbon emissions, we really need to come together as one globe and cannot just be divided by borders or sectors.
Well, as if by magic, the IEA recently did release a white paper on the subject. If you do policy, you'll get rewarded. The words of Brian Motherway when we spoke a few weeks ago. So he gave me a little bit of a heads up. Brian, tell us about the white paper. Tell us about, the importance of policy and regulation in tackling the matter of energy efficiency.
Regulation isn't always the most, welcome word in business circles, but it really has worked. If you look at the parts of the world and the technologies that have improved their efficiency most over decades, it's been driven by regulation. And let me just give you one example, which we've been studying recently, which is around appliances. So whether we're talking about lighting or washing machines or televisions, in markets such as here in Europe, also in the US, Japan, other places where they've had regulation to improve the efficiency of these appliances over decades, those appliances are now like for like using half the electricity. So the washing machine in your home today is costing you half as much as it would otherwise in the absence of the efficiency gains driven by policy. The average family in the US today is spending more than $300 less per year on electricity to run its white goods, because regulation has been in place over decades to drive the manufacturers in the right direction. Other policies work as well, and other policies will open up, but good old-fashioned regulation, encouraging manufacturers, pushing consumers towards the more efficient products, really does work.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer, do you feel that you've got that regulatory predictability?
As fundamental investors, we're always looking to understand the regulatory landscape. I mean, the regulation, the policy around climate and energy is obviously moving fairly quickly at the moment, and particularly in the run-up to COP. I think that understanding programs like the EU's Fit for 55 and how they're going to deliver on these commitments and what they mean for different industries and sectors is obviously a really important part of our role. Understanding that how that creates tailwinds for companies like ABB and Alfa Laval and other companies that we own in our portfolios. The only other point I just want to make, and we're talking about different sectors, having that kind of view across all different sectors, where we sit as investors, I think it's really interesting now with this focus on net zero and the kind of commitments that companies are making to decarbonisation. We see a much kind of greater focus on companies understanding what the costs of that decarbonisation are, and we're starting to see almost marginal abatement cost curves of the different prices of technologies, and so actually that really helps to kind of put energy efficiency and the paybacks that you get from this very low-hanging fruit right up there in the kind of most obvious choices that a company can make in terms of its investments to address decarbonisation. So I think that's an important part of this is the kind of focus around net zero and company plans is really helping us to have much more greater visibility on the kind of trajectory for companies and the kind of implied costs of getting there.
Yeah, Julianne, what more do governments need to do?
I first kind of like the energy efficiency first principle. Yeah. That's where it starts because it's here and now, and 1 gigawatt hour saved is 1 gigawatt hour that doesn't need to be produced. I think encouraging sector coupling, business model innovation is second element in the policy. And I'm with Morten and Brian here on the energy efficiency standards. Further standards, more rolled out. There is a standard for heating and cooling of building called AHRI that the industry took, and some countries have implemented in their local regulation, but far from all have done that. So we see really an opportunity to scale up and spread the implementation of these energy efficiency standards across many industries.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was the same also in our industry. When you talk about use of electric motors and variable speed drives, we saw there the European Union took a good step by introducing what we call IE3 standards this year, and then also already announced that the IE4, which is the next level of energy efficiency, will be implemented in 2 years' time. And what happens then is that China also followed and came out at the same time. We saw Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries is following these standards, and that's so important, I think, that somebody needs to take kind of the leap of faith here and jump and take the lead, and then others will follow. And there is where we also, as ABB, we are working strongly that we implement those standards also in US, in India, in the rest of the world, because then we can all compete on the same level, but let's do it on the right energy efficiency level.
Yeah, can we talk a bit more about the geographic spread, Brian, because the EU's pledged to improve energy efficiency by at least 32.5% by 2030. But by 2030, the Green Week this year, the EU Green Week, as we know, addressed the need to deliver sustainable industrial systems and promote cleaner technology. So the mood music out of the EU is very good. Can other geographies of the world catch up? Would you say the EU is sort of leading the race? Who's lagging? Who's keeping up with the EU? Who needs to?
It's great to see European leadership. And for me, it's not just about reducing emissions, but it's about future readiness, because this is where the markets are going to be. Having the technologies that will solve people's climate problems, having the technologies that would lower people's energy bills. This is where business needs to go. And I commend those that are doing that. But at the same time, a ton of carbon dioxide is a global citizen, whether it comes from Jakarta or Philadelphia or London or Paris. It has the same impact on our climate change challenge. And so we do need to think about this globally. And of course, the growing markets in economic terms and in energy terms, to be frank, are not Europe. They are Southeast Asia, they are Africa. They are India, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to think about this globally in terms of technology deployment, but also global collaboration, because some of the transition measures are not as affordable in certain parts of the world as they are others. And I really would encourage Europe, if I can speak to Europe in that way, to think about this globally. Obviously, doing what Europe needs to do to show leadership and to capture future markets is fantastic. But Europe can't do this alone. This is a kind of a strange race where countries around the world are competing to move towards low carbon. But it's not about who gets there first. We all need to get there, and we all need to work together to get there, because we all lose if only half of us get there. So this really needs to be thought about in a global way, particularly a focus on the growing parts of the world that may need financial support, they may need technology exchange, but also have great ideas. We talk about Europe's leadership, but I would say the fastest moving country on energy efficiency today is China. We also see fantastic innovation going on in India. Just before I joined you today, I was speaking to the Minister of Energy in Chile, who are doing really amazing work on heating and cooling and energy efficiency. So there's a lot of really exciting innovation going on around the world, and we really need to learn from each other and talk to each other about
A
this.
joined up approach. So Jennifer, how do we boost private investment in those economies that need the investment, that need the help, the guidance to mitigate and to protect those developed developing
as
nations?
global investors, we can look across and understand the drivers in different markets and how different costs of capital are obviously kind of resulting in different levels of investment in climate solutions. But in terms of some of the challenges around emerging markets and having the kind of innovative financing structures that will enable the investment into those markets, I mean, you're starting to see that, and we've seen a lot more of kind of flows into, particularly on the private side. But I still think we need to see kind of greater innovation from the financial community and working in partnership with development banks, etc., to kind of deliver on that, because we, as Brian is saying, we need to make sure that this is a global energy transition, and that is something that we deliver in kind of by sharing technologies and kind of thinking about how to be more collaborative in that respect.
Yeah, you have customers, it's something you're passionate about, both of you. So elaborate further on, the subject of the technologies that you're using, you're excited about, that society needs to use, to embrace, to help us on this energy efficiency subject.
Absolutely, and as we also said, our customers and partners, they are all committed to sustainability targets, to become carbon neutral, but they don't always know how. And I feel that's overall, when we come up with a lot of our solutions and products that is being integrated into our customer solutions, they come up with those right building blocks. And this can be this, you can say maybe the smaller thing, like an escalator, when you long escalator at the airport, which today we use what we call regenerative drives. It means that when you're going down the steps, you will at the same time generate energy and you put it back on the network. Or like the propulsion systems in trains are braking into the station. That means, again, they produce energy. Instead of you use that in brakes, today you put it back into the electric network, and in that way saving energy. It's just a couple of examples how we work and use technology to help the performance of the equipment on our customers.
Can you give us some examples of what you're doing, Julien?
Yeah, we are sometimes calling ourselves energy hunter. So we're hunting for waste energy streams, figure out how you can recycle that energy back into the processes of our customers, or selling that energy towards another energy users. And we do that by coupling several sectors. I mentioned data centers and district heating is a quite notorious example that we're fostering today. I think on this investment side, we are working, yet not in a very systematic way, by bringing investors to support our customers in fighting capital allocation issues. And I see opportunities for doing more in this area. And repeating a bit myself here on the connectivity angle and what it will bring, it will give a possibility to measure the energy savings that our customers are going to make thanks to our technology, thanks to the investment. And then the investors can have a bankable solution to place their bet on. I think that's really a great next step for us to accelerate even further.
I mean, I suppose one of the things that we really see now from our end clients is that a kind of greater demand in understanding some of the environmental outcomes of the investment decisions that we're taking. So they want to see more information about climate and carbon footprints in the investment reports that we provide them. But the more that we can quantify the kind of benefits of ABB and Alfa Laval's products in how they're kind of delivering energy savings for their customers. Those are kind of really rich things for us to be able to share with our end clients that, to help them to sort of understand the wider benefits of us being investors in companies like this.
How are you two engaging with the investor community when it comes to energy efficiency? There's the investor, there are the companies. Let's discuss how it works, the process, what's going on.
Yeah, we see, first of all, that it's really got way higher attention in the discussions in our meetings that it had 5 years ago. Today, it is really it's a curiosity about what do we bring to the table as a company, what do we do, and in way more detailed questions about how do we make a difference, how do we measure, how do we use science-based target setting and also then measuring, and we can show that in what we do with our products and solutions and what we do together with our customers, because that's, for us at ABB, we have a strong commitment. We will be carbon neutral as a company in our own operations by 2030 latest. But at the same time, we said that more than 100 times bigger savings will be with what we do with our customers. So that's the big savings and how we can implement the energy efficient products and solutions in our customers and partners' installations. That's what we really have an impact.
I think it's very similar to Morten, and I take the opportunity also to add that Alfa Laval has taken the same commitment on carbon neutrality. We are working with the same agenda, 2030, and it comes also about applying the medicine to ourselves, driving energy efficiency and other decarbonization measures to ourselves, and measuring it is one key element. Creating the baseline and starting to work towards these targets is of course key. And I think adding to what Jennifer, or responding to what Jennifer challenged us also, I mean, we have a big responsibility to measure, to demonstrate with science-based targets and measurements the cases and the business cases we are bringing to the table. And we do that in collaboration with our partners and bringing investors in. I think it's still done on an ad hoc basis for us to bring investors to the table at the same time with our customers. And I feel an opportunity there, or I see an opportunity to do that in a more systemic way.
So Brian, companies need to operate themselves more efficiently from an energy perspective, looking at their operations. They need to innovate for efficient technologies. Governments need to regulate. They need to incentivize us towards a low carbon society. So let's talk about the IEA's view on investment. What role should investors play on mitigating climate change and improving energy efficiency?
Investment is obviously key, and investment needs to triple in all clean energy sectors. Need to see huge growth, particularly in energy efficiency, in early deployment of wind and solar and other technologies, in innovation and research. And we need to see it particularly in some of the markets that really matter, which include Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, China, India, other emerging markets. So investment is central to all of this, whether it's people buying a better appliance or building a better home, or whether it's mass upgrade of the iron and steel sector or deployment of CCUS. It's central to everything. What makes efficiency obviously interesting is, as we've been hearing from the colleagues here, is its rate of return is much clearer here and now. Even if you had no interest in climate, the opposite of energy efficiency is waste. So a factory or a business that invests in becoming more efficient gets a direct positive benefit on the bottom line tomorrow. So equally, a consumer can feel their home is cooler if they live in a warm place, warmer if they live in a cool place, their bills can go down. Efficiency has a lot to really sell it quickly at an investment level. And I think it's really key. It's a great place to start as we try to grow investment across all sectors of clean energy. Efficiency has a lot to sell itself on.
I mean, are your clients, is the community licking their lips? In 30 years, you've got an opportunity to invest in a huge movement that's going to change the world? I mean, as investors, are you just thinking, wow, there's a huge...
I think investors, even in the last couple of years, have really understood the kind of multi-decade opportunity that climate presents. I mean, there's a whole range of opportunities across, different asset classes. I mean, we're, predominantly focused on public markets and equities and fixed income, but there's opportunities in infrastructure and property, in venture capital. So this is an opportunity across the board, and I think that the investor community, has really understood the kind of significance and the value of this opportunity. And even with Brian, some of the figures there, I think the kind of additional investment that is going to be required in our energy systems to decarbonise and kind of transition towards this net zero is very significant. I think it's an increase from around $1,800 billion today of annual energy investment to around $3,200 billion by 2040 on an annual basis. So, and most of that needs to go into energy efficiency and low carbon solutions. So there's a whole range of opportunities. As investors, it's our role to find the winners and losers from this transition. There are companies that are obviously providing the products and services that enable, decarbonisation for companies, but there are some industries and sectors that look quite challenged. Decarbonisation is going to be very expensive. There are, less low-hanging fruit for those, for some of those harder to decarbonise sectors. So it's really kind of understanding, on a sector-by-sector basis, what the kind of decarbonisation plans are, and understanding the kind of implied cost of that and how that impacts the long-term financial productivity of companies. So yeah, it's a very significant opportunity.
Do you have the data available, the tools available to measure?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really still a
risk.
kind of evolving part of the industry standards, and we talked about standards for energy efficiency, but there's lots of standards that will be required for us to be able to ensure that we're being transparent, and the end investors understand how we're investing in climate. Just, I suppose, as a kind of anecdotal point, in terms of the kind of investor backing for this now, there is a net zero asset managers initiative, in the race, we're seeing in the race to zero with COP26. And now they have a total of 43 trillion in AUM behind that, with around 130 asset management signatories. I mean, that's some of the world's largest investors now saying that we're committed to ensuring that we really understand climate risk and opportunity in our investment portfolios. And we will help our clients to deliver on their own commitments as well. So I think there is a much greater awareness in the investment community, but the challenges with data and this kind of point around the data availability from emerging markets companies is not as, the coverage is much less than for developed market companies, and then understanding the kind of right metrics by which we assess the kind of decarbonisation of our portfolios. That's very complex, and so those kind of the things that we're hoping to see kind of a greater development around, so that there's a kind of clearer understanding.
Which feeds into digitalization, Morten. I mean, it's so exciting, isn't it, what we're seeing?
Absolutely, and I think for me, digitalization here gives just about transparency, that we understand what's the energy, where do we spend energy today, where are the opportunities for improvement, because that is how we kind of opening the doors for energy efficiency, when you have that greater transparency. And there is quite easy today with, for instance, what we do is with smart sensors that we can put on every motor, electric motor, that you have thousands in a factory, and you can be able to identify how much energy is spent in every motor around on the factory floor, and then people can quite easy make decisions. So what are the motors I should upgrade first? As you say, where is the shorter payback time? It's as simple as that, and there is where digital is a real enabler to make better decisions.
Give us some examples, Julia, of digital being an enabler, because I love this word, enabler.
Well, I mean, similar to ABB, we also have sensors on our equipment, and if you put sensors on a heat exchanger, for example, you would know when your heat exchangers require cleaning. And the whole purpose about cleaning heat exchangers is to recover its maximum energy efficiency capacity. So to know when it's time to clean your heat exchanger, when it's time to do the maintenance, is a huge energy efficiency enabler on already existing equipment. So it spills over not only on the CapEx, but also how you run your maintenance of your existing device. So it is a huge enabler, both from taking the right decision on CapEx and on OpEx.
Brian, I want to come back to something you touched on, but we've got a little bit of time, and I think it's important we address it, which are, the poorer nations, the developing nations. How do we ensure that the energy transition doesn't impact, the poorer, the lower income parts of society of the world?
So it's a key question, obviously, Mark. And I would say, listening here today, including my own comments, we all love efficiency. We think it's great. I'd almost, if I was listening, I'd say, what's the problem? It makes sense. Investors like it. Businesses are doing it. But efficiency is hard on the ground because it's abstract. Businesses have other things to think about. Consumers have other things to think about. It's not, as we said earlier, it's not very sexy. You can see a solar panel on a roof. You understand what that is. A minister can cut a nice ribbon on a wind farm. They can understand that. Energy efficiency is more abstract, more distant from people's lives. And of course, for people who, we're in very luxurious positions. Okay, bills are higher than we'd like, but we have access to the energy we need. We have access to lighting and heating and comfort. We can move around. We can use appliances. That's not true in every part of the world. And so, in many parts of the world, energy use, let's not confuse energy efficiency with giving people the energy they need to live comfortable, healthy lives, and sometimes those issues are confused. So there are parts of the world where they feel energy efficiency means kind of restricting our ability to grow economically or to provide our citizens with comfort. And it can also feel a bit luxurious that maybe you're asking me to buy more expensive washing machines because they'll save money over time, or whatever else. So it can feel distant and disconnected from people's immediate problems, I think. And I think finance is really important. I think, again, treating this in a global way, understanding that we're in this together globally from a climate change point of view, and understanding that the opportunities exist. There are huge, huge, huge financial opportunities in the growing markets like China, Southeast Asia, India, etc., where there's a lot of buildings being built that are either going to be efficient and low carbon or the opposite. There's a lot of factory growth. There's a lot of business growth. There's huge potential opportunities here. So there's
Does
risks to
China,
doing it wrong.
Brian, does China get enough sort of credit for what it's doing on the energy efficiency side?
So China is the fastest improving country in the world from an energy efficiency point of view, but it's because it started very, very inefficient, particularly because it's got such large industries, such heavy focus on iron and steel and cement, things, of course, that we buy. That's another point. But it is making faster progress because it knows it's unsustainable economically, socially, environmentally. Their energy growth they used to be seeing was just not sustainable. So they are showing that with a concerted national effort, policy, business working together, you can really make fast progress. And they're gaining it. They're seeing reduced air pollution in cities. They're reducing their energy imports. They're tackling their emissions. So they're an example of what can be done. There's plenty of economies doing great things. There's plenty of economies more efficient than China. But as I said earlier, everybody has something to learn from everybody else. Everybody is doing something interesting in this space.
But I get a feeling, are we sharing enough information, Morten? And
no, probably not, because
Yes.
we are not able to get, and I think it's not just sharing information between countries, but it's making the transparency for the end user or for the user. It's like Brian's example of buying a fridge. It is expensive to buy a very inefficient fridge. It is over the lifetime that fridge you spend way more in energy than you spend on the purchase price. So it's the capex versus the opex spending. And that is where we need to get way better transparency for the decision makers going to use the equipment or the assets towards on the decision making on what do you buy in the first place. Because I feel at times we are running after, we are putting in variable speed drives after the customer have bought an inefficient motor, and then we can help them to improve. But we should do that in the first place. It's just way more efficient and cheaper. So there is this knowledge that is at times or is lacking between the decision makers, the ones who are doing the purchasing, and the one who makes the equipment. So that's because most of the energy, take an example of an industrial motor, 6% of the price or the lifetime cost of a motor, 6% is the purchase price. 94% of the total cost of ownership for a customer is the energy bill. So therefore, if you can save 50% of the losses. I mean, that's a massive payback. But that is often because we have siloed often the decision making and haven't given the transparency across the board. That is where we are not able to always make the right decisions, unfortunately.
Julien, let's talk COP26, biggest COP since 2015 at least, maybe ever. We can debate that. What's achievable, A, and B, everyone's going to get this question, and what's on your wish list?
Well, first of all, we need very concrete action plan. Not wishful thinking. We need really concrete action plan, and I'm pretty convinced we're going to allocate a certain number of these actions towards the development of new clean energy sources, to technology readiness. You mentioned hydrogen, carbon capture. We will invest in this area for sure, but we need to equally invest in the deployment of already existing and available energy efficiency measures and investments. So that's really where I wish a balanced view on the new clean energy sources on one end that required money from R&D perspective to bring them to technology readiness, to the energy efficiency where the technology are there, and we need deployment of these technologies across many sectors.
Jennifer, what's achievable and what's on your wish list?
Well, you're right. This is a really important COP, and I think also it's important just to remember that it has been delayed by 1 year. And during that 12-month period, we've also seen the most recent report come out from the IPCC with the kind of very kind of concerning and alarming warnings about climate and the kind of the fact that many of these trends are happening faster than scientists have previously thought. So I think there is a kind of an increased pressure on this COP, and we're also seeing a kind of an increased expectation around countries ratcheting up their emissions. So I think there's a lot riding on this meeting in Glasgow in a few weeks' time. In terms of what's achievable, I mean, I think there's a kind of a number of things that we're expecting to see. There's obviously the kind of NDC updates, so we'll see kind of whether countries are ratcheting up their ambition and whether we're likely to kind of see further policies come through from that. There's a piece around the kind of transfer of carbon permits and whether companies might be able to kind of transfer those more internationally. There's a piece around coal phase out. That's obviously really important for understanding kind of energy systems and potentially stranded assets. And then there's a piece around climate finance, and we go back to that point around the kind of transfer of technologies to emerging markets. Developed markets had kind of committed to transfer significant sums of capital to developing markets to help them with the transition. So I think all of these things are on the table.
It's 100 billion, isn't it? They haven't touched the sides, and the last one it was below 80, wasn't it? Yeah.
So as investors, there's lots to watch out for in terms of new policy commitments that drive the tailwinds behind the companies that we're investing in, but also perhaps some of the industries that we invest in as well, that the increased potential risk of stranded assets and increased costs from regulation as well. So those are the kind of broad range of things that we're looking out for.
Yeah. Brian, what's on the IEA wish list for COP26?
So we see a lot of momentum building as our colleagues are saying. We see a lot of announcements about higher levels of ambition. We see a lot of commitments to stronger action. We've got to see that action. We track both promises and the delivery of the promises, and right now we're seeing more of the former than the latter. So we really need to see some hard policy action coming across the line, action by investors and by companies. Efficiency is going to feature very well at COP. We have a major initiative that we've been working on with the UK government in its leading position as COP president. So we're going to be announcing what we call a call for action to raise energy efficiency ambition, where a number of countries are going to commit to really stepping up their ambition for efficiency in this decade. And I stress in this decade because 2050 can seem far away. Some of these things can seem quite abstract. Action now is really what it's got to be about. That's what COP has got to focus on. Action now.
Action now. Morten, final words. Big pressure for you.
So less so blah, blah, blah. Isn't that the topic these days? So, no, and I would have the same on a very pragmatic basis, just saying that this is we have a global problem in front of us. We need a common solution to that issue of carbon neutrality and how we're going to achieve it. And then that we use the market dynamics. And with there, even we need to talk about regulations, even things that will be tough, I think, there about like carbon tax, a global carbon tax, which is or something I believe we have to be able also to use market dynamics to solve the problem, because we do know that climate change has a cost, and therefore not to put a price on it is also to kind of putting the scale out of balance. So that's my wish for COP26. If it's realistic, I don't know. I still hope so, because I do see that it is needed, and now we need to take actions now, and we cannot wait till 20, 30, 40, and 50, because then it may be too late.
Yeah, it is too late. We could almost carry on the conversation about carbon tax and it's by itself, but we can't. I'm the time police. We've hit the end. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that wonderful panel. Thank you, Morten, Brian, and to Jennifer and Julia as well. Absolutely brilliant panel on leading with technology. We've dived deeply into the energy efficiency topic. I think you're much the wiser after that. Another panel in our sustainability series. Big thanks to all our panelists. Thank you.